New reports say that the Trump administration is taking on affirmative action at America's universities. The Justice Department plans to investigate whether college admission policies discriminate against white applicants. For more, I want to bring in legal analyst and trial attorney Misty Marris. Misty, is this happening, in your opinion, first and foremost?
Yeah, so what we saw was an internal memo from the Justice Department saying that they're actually going to be looking and investigating university policies that may have gone a little bit too far beyond what the Supreme Court is allowing in taking race into a consideration into admission. So this is an internal memo. It's saying we're going to investigate these complaints. So just as a step aside, people are placing these complaints to the DOJ saying, hey, I was unfairly rejected, wasn't able to move into this or that program, and now they're actually taking action to see if that's the case.
But what you're going to have is the other side is going to say that this affirmative action was, became law for a reason. It became a policy, a part of the American, culture, if you will, for a reason, whether it was civil rights abuses back in the 60s or, whatever. So they're going to say that frankly, that basically the DOJ is going to, be called racist. They're going to be called that they're overreaching, overstepping. It seems to me this is an emotional fight that's going to get very emotional.
Definitely. The DOJ in this instance is getting a bad rap. What's getting this salacious headline, oh, the DOJ wants to stop all affirmative action. No. What they're saying is this. There's an equal protection clause. The races should be treated equally. No one should be more advantaged or disadvantaged because of affirmative action. And that's what they're doing. They're going to investigate these cases. And, Cheryl, here's how it plays out. They're going to take action. They're going to sue some of these universities. They're going to review those practices. And guess what? The Supreme Court didn't say you can do anything. You can consider race alone. They said it can be a factor. So it will be to the Supreme Court ultimately to decide what the next precedent
is. So that was my question. So you think that if the DOJ does find evidence of abuse at American universities, that they are leaning towards non-white applicants, and they find that this is true, and the evidence is there, Supreme Court. That's where it goes.
Okay. That's where we're headed. And the issue is that the Supreme Court doesn't have a bright line right now. It's awfully murky. So we need some guidance on what it means to use race as a factor in the admissions procedures and what is too far.
Is this something, in your opinion, a legal opinion, something the DOJ needs to focus time, resources, and money, frankly, on? There's a lot that the DOJ has on their plate right now.
Absolutely. And the DOJ, I mean, they have a lot to accomplish, but it's important. I mean, we're talking about the people that are going to be the employees of the future and their education. And by the way, it doesn't just affect white Americans, Asian Americans. There's a lot of studies. There's a Harvard case right now that says Asian Americans were getting the short end of the stick in admissions at Harvard. So this is a big issue. And education, as such a cornerstone of our economy, a cornerstone of employment, we need to make sure that everybody has a fair shake.
Where are the complaints mainly coming from? Is it private education? Is it Ivy League? Is it more state schools? I mean, where are we seeing the most potential abuse of civil rights?
You're seeing it in state schools. You're seeing it in federally funded schools because those are the ones that are subject to those affirmative action rules. So schools that get federal funding, that applies, and any sort of state-sanctioned universities, those applies. And that's where you're seeing most of these complaints. And quite frankly, the DOJ should have always been investigating these complaints because the pendulum doesn't need to swing all the way that one minority group is getting all the advantage.
So just to clarify, because you mentioned Harvard as one of the institutions that's been accused of this, but they would be exempt from this, is what you're saying?
No, they get federal funding.
They would. They do have federal funding.
Yes, they get federal funding, and that's a current lawsuit. So we're going to see that one play out and see how that impacts.
It's interesting. Also, just while I've got you here, we're waiting on, of course, the briefing, and I want to remind our viewers really quick, you're looking at a live picture of the podium, the Brady briefing room at the White House. We're expecting at any moment to see Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders going to be giving her daily on-cam briefing. Yes, the on-camera briefing is back, luckily for all of us. We're going to take you to those comments, of course. But real quick, while you're here, obviously the immigration move by the Trump administration today, I would think there's going to be a lot of legal challenges to that. I mean, if it gets through Congress, which is another example. But, they really want to change the legal immigration process in this country. Say that it's passed. Who starts to yell and scream about it?
Oh, well, I mean, I think you see the left yelling and screaming immediately, and you're definitely going to see a lot of legal actions taking place. And that's the reality. And in general, a lot of what we've seen from the DOJ, a lot of what we've seen, for instance, with the immigration issues, there's a tilt going back towards the right, and that's because the pendulum swung all the way over here to the left So it's time to bring everything back a little more neutral.
As far as the Department of Justice overall, we do have a new FBI director that was sworn in, luckily, yesterday. You know, I'm curious about your sources in law enforcement and, again, on the legal side as well. You know, there's so many different issues that the country is dealing with right now. We're dealing with, frankly, a war on cops, if you will, in several cities. You've got violent crime rising in cities like Chicago. The DOJ certainly has to have a voice in all of that. You've got the immigration issue. And then, of course, you've got the general threat, you know, whether it's Homeland Security or Department of Justice, they've got to monitor what's happening with potential acts of terrorism, cyber terrorism. It could go on and on. You have to wonder sometimes if that department itself is spread just a little bit too thin.
Oh, definitely. I mean, they have so much to deal with, but we have seen a lot of aggressive affirmative activity by the DOJ. We are talking about police officers. They've already come down and spoken about some of the police issues with police officers that kind of got into a snowball under the Obama administration. You're talking about police officers being afraid to do their job, and the DOJ has pulled back on some of those policies in an internal memo we saw recently. So they want to reinstate, you know, that pride in police, make it so they're not afraid to do their job. I think that when you see what's happening in Chicago, especially over this recently, I mean, that is just clear cut. Something needs to be done. Right here in New York City, we had a police officer assassinated. There are a lot of issues relating to law enforcement. But you are right. The DOJ has their plate full.